a new teaser for Chapter 5 has been out for a while. Well, if you don't know, Chapter 5 is going to come out on February 2nd, the 18th of 2026, which is basically a month away. Which led me to wonder, what would happen in Chapter 5? Well, we don't really know, but there is a lot that could happen in Chapter 5. Assuming that it is the final chapter, but there's really no evidence that it would be, but assuming that it is. So, what would happen in Chapter 5? Well, here are my predictions of what could happen, but it's most likely not likely. But before I go on, what is Poppy Playtime and what is the current story? Well, Poppy Playtime is set somewhere in like the early 2000s, I think. So basically, it's in the early 2000s. You're an ex-employee who, for some reason, came back many years later and wanting to go back for some reason. But you got a note by some random person, but we don't know who sent it and why. We have to go find the flower, so we went to go find the flower. So we return, and then in Chapter 1, where we do a lot of things, we solve puzzles, do all that, and etc. At the very end, we meet, of course, Huggy, one of the most popular main mascots in the Playtime Co factory, which, if you don't know, is made by Elliot Ludwig, one of the co-founders of Poppy Playtime. In Chapter 1, where we barely managed to escape Huggy, and then we dropped a box on him, which led to Huggy's downfall, and then we never seen him ever since. Until Chapters 4 and 5, because during Chapters 2 and 3, there seems to be like a lot of like appearances of Huggy, but like not actually him. Like, for example, in Chapter 2, where you get to see fur on the side pipes and walls, noting that maybe that's where Huggy fell and then got into the vents. Then in Chapter 3, we don't really see any of this, but we do see a lot of cutouts of him. And then in Chapter 4, we finally get to see the ruined Huggy face to face behind a door. And that would be the end of Chapter 4 after defeating Dowie. And then that's it. So at that time, that is what is going to happen in Chapter 5 in the game when it comes out in February. But I'm going to say what would happen in Chapter 5, who are the enemies and characters, and what are their motives. Well, let's see what happens. So at the end of Chapter 4, we walk in a room full of poppy flowers, and then we find a door where we realize there's actually a security thing to stop anyone from coming in or coming out, and which, of course, activates Huggy. So during that time period, a lot of things happened in Chapter 4, where Dowie died, everyone from Safe Haven died, and many more. And we finally get to see a shadowy figure of the prototype for the very first time, because we never really see what the prototype really looks like or like any appearance. All we know is that they're just known as 1006, the prototype, and they just have a mechanical arm that seem to have like human body parts in it. But yeah. So here are my guesses that could happen in Poppy Playtime Chapter 5, but we really don't know. So in Poppy Playtime Chapter 5, what I think that could personally happen is that like maybe like after like leaving the room, you just go straight into the labs or something, and then like either that or like some playroom that we got to see in the latest like trailer from Poppy Playtime from Chapter 5, because it showed like a little area with like mini Huggies. So maybe it could be that or the labs or either or. But yeah, I think it's either that or possibly could maybe even be like in some random room we never been in, because in the Poppy teaser trailer for chapter 5 there was a bunch of rooms, we made a new character and etc. But like we don't really know like where it's gonna set off or at least start us off. Then all we know is that we're just gonna start in the room area where we ended off in chapter 4, because and while that was happening, Huggy might try to get us, because that also happened during in chapter 4. So I think what might happen is, since chapter 5 starts, we have to get out of the room that we were in, but we only have a limited amount of time because Huggy is trying to kill us while they're in there. But we eventually do leave, but then that might get us to a room, and then we're all by ourselves, and we have our blue hand, we have our Omni hand, our orange hand, shooter firecracker thingy, and we think we have the purple hand, but I think that one is like ruined by Holy Sword, who pretty much caused everything that happened in Poppy Playtime. So what my guess is that after leaving that room at the end of chapter 4, we were probably gonna go into the vents or find a door or go through or something. And then we're either gonna be in some type of hallway, some type of like area where only like Ludwig and maybe higher beings might be in. Maybe we might already be in the labs. And then after that, we might, walk across, wander around, look at things, and etc. But during that time period, we might hear maybe like a few sounds, maybe voices, because the mimic can mimic. Mimic. Anyways, as I was saying is, the prototype can mimic voices, and in that time period, they can also do. He's also like very fast and very smart and strong. I mean, there was like literally a whole tape of like him disabling a camera in like 22.5 seconds. So that's maybe might be it. I don't really know. We don't really know what can happen in chapter 5. There could be all sorts of things that can happen, but I don't really know. But I would like to like at least talk or explain about what could happen in chapter 5. And also in February I'm gonna play chapters 1 through 4. Then I might go play chapter 5 on February 18th, where it just came out, and I will just play it. There might be other people that might play on day release, but yeah. So that's what I'm gonna do. On February, I'm gonna play chapters 1 through 4, and then on the 18th, I'm gonna play chapter 5, and then that is gonna be my first time experience there. I don't really know what could happen in chapter 5, because there's like a lot of things that could happen. There's the Yule room that we saw from that hour video from Mom Entertainment, the creators of Poppy Playtime. If I have to guess, we might lead to that room maybe like in the mid to maybe early on in the game, and then like the labs could be like mid to maybe late way in the game, and then that could be it. I don't really know. There might be new characters, because we did see a couple, like one doll with like a stinger as a hair. And also in this chapter, we don't have Poppy or Kissy, because those are like our two main allies. Everything in chapter 4 was kind of like like a safety shelter with a bunch of allies, but most of them got killed by the prototype. Joey was a major one until we had to kill him because of difficulties. But yeah. But basically, we don't really know what could happen in Chapter 5. There's a lot of things that could happen, but we really just don't know. I mean, there could be pretty much anything, really. There's like a lot of like teasers about it, and like a lot of images of Poppy Playtime Chapter 5, but we really don't know. The only information that we really got is like images and teasers from like Steam, Mom Entertainment, and trailers and etc. But we really don't really know like where or what could happen, and we also don't know if Chapter 5 might be the end. It could be, maybe, but we don't know. We might either get a new chapter after Chapter 5, or we might just get like a new game after Poppy Playtime Chapter 1. We might get Poppy Playtime 2, but we really don't know. But yeah, all we know is that in Chapter 5, we just got into the room at the end of Chapter 4. Huggy's banging on the door, and we like need to like not die and get out. And then we probably do somehow or however we did it. We'll eventually get out. We'll probably find different enemy type encounters and etc. There might be like maybe like little puzzles or mini bosses we might get rid of. We might get a new hand, because we do know there is indeed a new hand that we did saw in Chapter 5, which was a yellow one, but I really don't know what that one could really do. But yeah, so it looks like Huggy might show up, but we might actually like kill him in the chapter, like we actually finally like kill this person at least for once. And then the prototype, or 1006, is gonna be the final boss. But like, he is the smartest and the strongest, so we really don't know of like what he's really gonna do, because he has so much potential. I mean, he can mimic voices, so he could easily use that in his advantage to trick us. Like use Poppy's voice, or Kissy's, or even Ollie's. Because apparently Ollie was an actual person at some point, but then he like died or something, and then yeah. But we really don't know what could happen in Chapter 5. But like, those are my predictions of what could happen in Chapter 5. But that just really depends, because we can honestly have way more than that. Because ever since Chapter like 1 or 2, like Chapter 1 could be beaten in like 5 minutes or so, and all the chapters after that were almost like an hour long. I think Chapter 1 might be like 15 to 20 minutes, and if you do speedrun it, you can actually beat it in like 5 minutes or so. And then most of the other chapters, you can probably beat it in like, if you're a speedrunner, you can probably do it in a couple of minutes. But if you're just playing the game casually, it'll probably take you like an hour and a half. So Poppy Playtime Chapter 1 was probably like 20 minutes. Chapter 2 was probably like half an hour, if not an hour. Chapter 3 was probably like an hour and a half. Chapter 4 was probably like almost about 2 hours. Maybe like hour and a half, if not 2 hours. So we don't know how long Chapter 5 could be, because each chapter that we get is usually longer than the others. So it could honestly be like, it could be 2 hours, maybe like 2 hours, if not 2.5 hours. I don't really know how long it would be, because we never ever played a chapter that was almost 2 hours long. I feel like Chapter 3 and 4 were probably the longest, because they're almost so close to like in that 2 hour period, just because how big and long the chapter is. So we could easily get a 2-hour, if not a 2.5 hour chapter type content in chapter 5. But it could be just easily as like an hour and an hour and a half. But we really don't know. But yeah, that's really all I gotta say about chapter 5. I really have nothing else to really say about this game. I'm really excited. I think chapter 3 and 4 might be my favorite chapters. I might have to go to chapter 3 might be my favorite, to be completely honest. Chapter 3 might be my favorite overall, just because how creepy it is, and just like how expanded and open world it is, unlike others. Chapter 2 I would say is my least favorite, because that's like more of like a puzzle thing, which makes sense because most of it is in the game station, which is a puzzle type room. Chapter 1 was like just in the main entrance, so you get to be in the little, like, you get to see all the rooms and such. Chapter 2 is the game station. Chapter 3 was the orphanage. Chapter 4 was the, like, basement area thing. I don't know what it's called. It's not the labs. I don't know what it would be called, but like I would say it's like the basement, if not a bunker. That's more likely it. And chapter 5 is the labs. But yeah, of all of those places, I do think the labs, the bunker, or even an orphanage would probably be the coolest area, because chapters 1 and 2 was kind of boring. I do consider chapter 3 to be my favorite, chapter 4 my second favorite, then chapter 1, then 2. I feel like chapter 2 is mainly just puzzles and not actually what Poppy Playtime is. Poppy Playtime chapter 1 was mainly like a couple puzzles, scare, then just running. Chapter 2 I would say it was mainly puzzle first, like scary second. Chapter 3 was probably, if not purely, just horror at that point. Chapter 4 was like a little more than that. It was like less scary, but like that one was definitely like easily second place of my favorite, just simply because you get so much lore and story from chapter 4. Chapter 3 and 4 is definitely the most long one out of all of them. But yeah, that's what I would consider my favorite chapters. I don't know how good chapter 5 will be. I would probably say it could easily be my third, if not my second favorite. I don't know, it could be my first. Chapter 3 was one of the best ones, just simply because of like how creepy of the lore and the story driven it was, because of the reasoning, and also the smiling critters. It also gave it like that very sad, tragic feeling. But yeah, that's what I consider one of my favorite chapters. But yeah, I really have nothing else to really say about chapter 5. That was mainly it. There's really nothing else to talk about. I already explained pretty much everything else. But yeah, but I really don't know what could happen in chapter 5. What I said could happen, but I really don't know. But yeah. But anyways, I hope you all have a good day, and I hope you guys enjoy chapter 5 when it does finally come out. So if you have any ideas or opinions what could happen in chapter 5, just comment down below. Subscribe if you want to see more, and like if you liked the video, and I'll see you next time. So bye.